What's going on, guys? Graham Jason Matthews here with WhatCulture.com. We got another exclusive interview here today. We're talking to Ryzen from AEW. Ryzen, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. How are you? Thank you guys so much for having me.
Absolutely, and thank you. Like I said earlier before we got started here, I've been hammering you for a while. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. I've been familiar with your work pre-AEW, but with all the stuff you got going on now, I thought now would be as perfect a time as any to talk about your career and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. And likewise, I've been a huge fan of WhatCulture.com, and I spend many of hours, late hours, when I can't sleep or when I just get off the road, watching What Culture on YouTube. So it's quite awesome to be able to be talking to you guys as well.
Awesome. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. But yeah, like I said, I've been following your work for a while, man. It's been cool to see you killing it in AEW. Recently, you've just been going as Ryzen. So your name is Rob Ryzen. What's the best way to address you? Is it Rob? Is it Ryzen? What's your preference?
Ryzen works best for me. I dropped the Rob, about a year or two ago, just to really, I know in the age of names, oftentimes it's just easier to address some of the wrestlers as one entity or one name. So, and because I was had transitioned over into a Reverend of Sin, I thought that Reverend Ryzen or just Ryzen just sounded a little more sinister than tacking the Rob onto it as my previous career. So, or my previous gimmick, if you would. So everything from a couple of years ago on has been just Ryzen.
Nice, awesome. Well, you kind of answered my next question. I was going to ask you, what's the origin of the Ryzen name? And you kind of mentioned the Reverend gimmick, the characters you mentioned right there. What was the origin behind coming up with the Ryzen name?
I've actually had that name for many, many, many years. When I used to play video games when I was younger and did Create a Wrestler, it was just the name that I had kind of gravitated to. I don't know kind of where it had come from. A lot of people like to try to, use like Terra Ryzen, who was Triple H and WCW to kind of make that connection. But I had really no idea about that. It was just something I was going to be rising, like Rob Rising and something like that. I dropped off the G. And then I had a buddy of mine when we started doing like tag team wrestling, when we were going to actually get into the business, who his name is Jason. His full name is Jason. And I was like, well, what if you cut that in half and I was Ryzen and you were Jay Sin. So I was Rob Ryzen and you were Jay Sin, and cut that into two names. And then we were looking at the names with the eyes in there and was like, well, let's just be a little unique with it, try to stand out. So let's throw Y's in there. So RYZIN, and he was SYNN. And then together we were High Risk, HYRYSK. So that's kind of how that all came about many, many years ago. 18 years ago, as a matter of fact, as of August, or coming in August, it'll be 18 years in the business.
Is that crazy for you to think that you've been doing this for almost 20 years now? I mean, that's unbelievable. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it is. It is very interesting, and it's just, it's crazy to think that I have been doing it pretty much, more than half my life now at this point. And on top of that, it's crazy to think that just now, after 18 years in the business, am I just now getting the exposure that I feel not only that I deserve, but that I've worked really hard to complete, or to come to the surface.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and it's been cool to see you killing it lately in AEW. Do you have people the last couple of months, the last year that you've been doing dark and stuff like that, that whether it be they start following you or whatever, they find your work and they're like, wow, I'm a big fan of this Ryzen guy. Like, I've been a big fan of your work. Like, you're a newcomer, so to speak. But do you have to tell them, like, listen, I've been doing this for a lot longer than you think. Like, I've been around the block. I've been pretty much everywhere by this point.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is an element of that, of the unknown. Obviously, when I was cutting my teeth in Denver, Colorado, and moving up and down the kind of the center line of the United States, from Amarillo, Texas, up through the Dakotas, up into a little bit of Canada and back down, I was basically just kind of isolated to the midline center of the United States, Nebraska, Kansas, all of those states. But one thing that all of those states and cities have in common is the fact that when I just rattled those off, people probably went into the back of their mind and saw like farm town, or they saw like, not densely populated areas other than Denver, my home city. So to cut my teeth and do all that I had done throughout that area was fantastic and very good. But a lot of people, obviously, the more known that I'm getting, weren't aware of all that I've accomplished through that place, and who could blame them? Especially back in the early 2000s when there wasn't as much social media or as much video presence online.
Yeah. Have you seen that be a benefit to you, or like, I guess maybe not a negative thing, but how have you seen social media be like beneficial to you personally over the course of your career?
I mean, social media is the way that everything is going around these days. Really, social media can make or break a person, can make or break a talent, can make or break, literally anything and everything, a business, any kind of entity. So social media is widely important, and it needs to be used with velvet gloves, because, you could say or do the wrong thing that could really just jeopardize your entire career going forward. So really, but social media can also, on the other foot, can be the biggest benefit. It could turn a typical indie wrestler in some small town into Danhausen, who is, one of the biggest names in professional wrestling today, who just got interviewed by, Conan O'Brien. And I don't even know the guy on a personal level. I've never met him, but, so not to sound like I'm putting him over, but you can't ignore the fact that he just did Conan O'Brien, and he's the only one that's not really tied to a company. I mean, Ring of Honor, but he has his own shirt at Hot Topic, and things like that really speak to who he is, or who he, who he is as a character, and all of that is social media driven. And so, bless him for it, if you would, to get to that level. And so much of the stuff that he, does, or some of these other wrestlers who are just as popular on social media, I definitely feel I am right up there with them as well. I'm very heavily involved on social media. I'm almost on it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, preaching the gospel to my congregation. And when I say that, it is not in jest. It's actually, I do believe on some level that I do have a congregation, a following of people who really hold on to what I say on social media and believe what I say and believe in me. So really the congregation is an extension of, who I am, and I'm able to use social media to preach the gospel to them.
Yeah, and it works out perfectly, too, especially with all your appearances on AEW, man. Like, you are literally on the show almost every single week, especially now that we have Dark and Dark Elevation. You're pretty much on, every single episode. So, especially with social media now, you can promote your matches that way, because the shows, air exclusively through YouTube and stuff like that. You just had a match last night on Dark Elevation, as we speak right now, with Ryan Nemeth. So, you guys were able to promote that match through Twitter and get people talking about it, making a match that would ordinarily be just any other match, make it special, add meaning to it, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I have been very blessed. A lot of people have had, a very rough go with the coronavirus pandemic and everything that, the independents were virtually shut down. Wrestling shows were virtually shut down. And I was very fortunate to get involved and have an opportunity with AEW kind of at the beginning of this, once they had, isolated themselves to Jacksonville, and keep delivering on a week-to-week basis to the point to where I was asked back on a consistent basis, and again, that plays to who I am as a talent and who I am as a person and what I contribute to the company, as well as them seeing something in me to bring me back on a week-to-week basis. Literally, I was just speaking to one of the higher ups there, and they had just informed me that I'm coming up on almost a year of being completely consistent with the company, and that's just that's huge, and obviously something that I think stands out for me and for them as a company. So I've been very, very grateful for the opportunity, and just want to keep continuing to go up and up and up from there.
Well, congrats, man. That's awesome. And to me, that doesn't even feel like a year. It feels like it's been only a couple of months. I mean, this whole period for a lot of people has been obviously rough for everybody, but it also, in a way, has flown by for a lot of people, too. Does it feel like it's been a year for you that you've been a part of AEW, or does it feel like it's been the full 365 days?
No, it's been, lightning speed, if you want to look at it from that angle. truly, I would have never guessed that it has been a year until I take a step back and look at it and go, oh my gosh, you're right. When I'm looking at the dates and things, and on a personal level, on top of the professional level, I had went through a lot of trials and tribulations, and I'm still going through it today, to chase down this opportunity with AEW, and I think that speaks a lot to how much I want this, and that my desire to be a full-time member of All Elite Wrestling, that I had a position with a company that I'd been with for 6 years in a high position, cush position, if you want to say that, as a, manager for a software company. And I have, pun intended, gone all in and have left that position because there was really no other choice, and have really focused in 100% and have dedicated myself 100% to All Elite Wrestling.
That's awesome, man. Like I said, congrats on your success, and it's been so cool to see you grow and be a part of the show for the last year. And again, literally, like I said, on the show every single week, which I don't think you could say for a lot of people. I mean, maybe some of the people that have been a part since the very beginning of like the pandemic era, that being Sean Dean, Lee Johnson, and it was there at the very beginning, people like that. But other than that, you've been there pretty much since the start, which has been super cool to see. Kind of going back before AEW, and we'll get back to the dark stuff for a second, but you've been a part of wrestling. You've been wrestling for a long time, a part of various companies. My first real exposure to you, I would say, I think I started following you around the time that you were part of the Free the Delete series with Matt Hardy back in early of 2020, late 2019. You were part of that series. My girlfriend became a fan of you as well through that show. So now every time we see you on Dark, we're like, oh, that's awesome. Can you kind of take me through that process of being a part of that series with Matt, and both, that show kind of leading to both of you guys coming over to AEW in different forms and fashions?
Yeah, absolutely. So Matt and I have always had a long-standing relationship through the independents, and we built actually our relationship, again, going back to the power of social media. We've actually built our relationship on Twitter alone, just by going back and forth a little bit, while he was still contracted with the WWE. Just small conversations that had just grown and transpired. Once he had left the WWE and started taking independent bookings, there was an opportunity there to have him come to Colorado. There was a promoter that was really looking to bring him in, and because of how hot I was, again, going back to, I had done literally everything I could do in that midline center of the United States, that I was basically the hottest talent in and out of that center area, which again doesn't speak to too much, because once I got into moving to Florida and things of that nature, it was they were like, oh, who, you did what here, you did, so on and so forth. But anyway, fast forward through that, and I tend to go on and on about things, but we ended up wrestling each other in a ladder match on the independent circuit years ago, and it was a well-received, highly touted match, sold out, like 600 strong, which in the building that we were in was like, that was basically people pouring out of that venue. And again, fantastic. And so him and I have always been, close since then, both as, as friends, and he knew what I could do on a talent level as well. So once Free the Delete became his brainchild, and once he started kind of playing and writing out where he saw that, there was a spot for a character, spot for somebody that he really basically wrote me in for that. Because I know a lot of it had to do with the the 7 DTs, and kind of this, kind of religious, but not really in the frame of religion. But different things like that. There was the sinister waters of Roar and all of that kind of stuff. The Lake of Reincarnation. He was doing the stuff with Wyatt towards the end of his WWE tenure. All of these elements, and then of course my introduction into this dark character that I started doing on the independents, kind of caught his attention. So one thing led to the next, and I went out to Carolina and we worked on this series.
Well, that's awesome because just watching the show and your involvement in it, it's safe to say you were such a perfect fit for it. Like it fit you like a glove to be part of that Free the Delete series and to be alongside Matt Hardy. I've been anxiously awaiting the day that we get to see. I mean, I know he's not doing the Broken stuff right now, but I am looking forward to the day we get to see the Broken character and Ryzen as a character on AEW TV together. I feel like that's inevitable.
Yeah, and I absolutely I agree. And there have been little teases for those who really focus on everything AEW, and those who really pay attention to BTE or being the elite, things like that. There was a moment where when he was broken, that I had approached him in the hallway on an episode of BTE, one where he was thinking about Sammy Guevara and he strangled me. And then a few weeks later where he actually used Maxwell as a voodoo doll and was twisting and messing up my body. So if you people haven't went back and seen that is kind of an extension where I was demanding my essence back from him. And, which is, of course, what happened at the end of Free the Delete. He had taken that from me, and he had Maxwell be able from all the way back at the Hardy compound, be able to twist and turn a wrestling buddy of me and really twist my arms against my will and things of that nature. So there have been little droplets throughout. And then, of course, with Dark and everything, I did compete against the HFO a couple of weeks back on an episode of Dark. Although there wasn't much action, I was isolated outside the ring. I wasn't able to get in. And, but yeah, there's definitely unfinished business between Matt and I. He knows it and I know it. And I think that it's only a matter of time before that does cross over into AEW. Again, the Twitterverse and Instagram and everybody who knows me, they either know me from AEW, of course, these days, or they know me from Free the Delete. So, it's a daily occurrence where somebody asks, Matt or myself, when we are going to right that wrong that he had taken it from me. And in his current, character, or if that's what you want to call it, in his current DT, in his current persona, with Big Money Matt being back, maybe there's something there. Maybe I can bargain with him. I know he's a big fan of money, so maybe there's something there where I can offer my services, or he can offer his services. But I just want my essence back because obviously I've been on quite the slump when it comes to AEW, and my sole reason for that, in my opinion, is because he has that critical part of me to go out and finish.
There's a story there. There's a story there, like you said, unfinished business. I'm sure we'll get to it at some point. It seems like Matt doesn't leave any loose ends, so to speak. Is like with the, what was it, the Ultimate Deletion, not Ultimate Deletion, was it Ultimate Deletion? The Elite Deletion match from a couple of months ago at Full Gear, in the match with him and Sammy, making a callback to his old Hardy Halloween celebration from 2 years earlier, kind of opening the loose end. So you never know. I'm sure we will get that at some point, and I look forward to it. But it's amazing too, because you mentioned how people know you now from AEW. They know you either from that or Free the Delete. But you've been wrestling a long time, man. I think a lot of people, because I was one of these people too, that saw you a part of these projects, that didn't know that we've actually seen you before in various other companies, specifically doing work with WWE in NXT on many different occasions. Like, have you had people point out to you like, oh wow, I've actually knew you before you came to AEW? Because it seems like between now and who you were years ago, it's a complete 180 in like the best way possible. Like you've completely transformed yourself, a complete character overhaul, and it's awesome to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that too, that the callback to that. So, as I had mentioned to and alluded to, I had done basically all I could on the independents. I was very successful on the independents. I've wrestled a lot of the key names or a lot of the big names in independent wrestling, a lot of which are my peers today at AEW. Cole Cabana, Kazarian, wrestled them on the independents, went on a Canadian tour with Jake the Snake Roberts. So a lot of these people, and of course, worked a lot of the shows with these people as well. Abaddon is from the same kind of area of Colorado as well. So there's a lot of peers here in AEW that had already seen kind of what I had done. But in order to make myself a success, I'm a huge believer in, you use the law of attraction every day, which I'm a firm believer in, to manifest what you want, but you also have to put the work in as well. So when it came time, I had done some extra work in Sioux City, Iowa for the WWE, and took it on my own accord to pull William Regal aside and say, hey, what would it take for a guy like me from Denver, Colorado, who drove 12 hours to get here? What would it take for me to get to that next level, to be seen, to be noticed? And he said, at that time, I believe FCW was just transitioning over to NXT and moving from Tampa to Orlando. And he said, to be honest with you, if you want something, I would head down to a coast. He's like, I recommend Florida as probably the area, because that's where you're going to be the most seen. So literally that's all he had to say. About a year and a half later, we packed up and we moved to Orlando, and I've never looked back. And that was about 5 or 6 years ago now. When I first got onto the scene, it only took a couple of months for people to see my desire and what I could bring to the table. And then I was doing extra work on a pretty regular basis for WWE NXT. And so I'd wrestled Baron Corbin, TM61, Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano. I mean, I was there, as I said, almost on a weekly basis as well. So I'm very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You had a lot of crazy matches over there, too. Like you said, it's a who's who of who you faced in NXT and who you're facing now in AEW. Like I said, dude, it's really cool to see. So if you're in Orlando now, then that must not really be much of a drive from Jacksonville for the AEW shows, right?
Yeah, it's, about 2 hours and some change, 2.5. But again, yeah, it's not that, that hard to get there and back. And so again, a perfect storm of things, going in my direction. And so without that opportunity, they wouldn't have been able to see me as often as they did. And then again, be able to grow my persona and again, contribute to AEW because I, without going into too much detail, I feel like even at my level, try to contribute anything and everything I can to the company. I want to see the company flourish. I want to see the company grow. So even if it's like the smallest little detail or the smallest little thing I can do to help benefit the company, I'm all for it. So.
Definitely, dude. And as we wind down here, too, I got to let you go in a couple minutes. But one thing I did want to ask you about, kind of going back to what you were mentioning earlier with being the elite. I know we almost spoke a couple of weeks ago, and you had mentioned, maybe if we speak by the time, by now, maybe more will be happening with your character on being the elite. And without getting into too much detail, there definitely is. You're a regular on the show doing some pretty crazy stuff. You don't have to give me the play-by-play with how everything came about with the angle, but like, how cool has it been? How cool has it been to be a part of the show? Like this massive YouTube wrestling success over the last couple of months. And again, you've been involved with the show for a while now since you started doing extra work with them, but you are literally a regular on the show now alongside Vicky Guerrero and Nyla Rose.
Yeah, I mean, just talk about, a massive opportunity within itself. So with the Nuns, the whole angle, to be able to work with them, who Vicky, of course, no introduction needed, one of the best in the business, one of the, biggest heels in the business, great on the mic, and just overall an amazing person. And then Nyla herself as well, just a beast. I mean, there's a reason why they call her the Native Beast. But just to be able to work with them and be able to be on this, on being the elite on a consistent basis. And for those who have been tuning in, it has been getting just funnier and funnier and more ridiculous as time has gone on. And trust us when I say that we have so much more left to show you guys in that realm. But it has been absolutely fantastic. And again, any way that I can contribute and any way that I can continue to expand the brand of Ryzen and to, again, push my propaganda, if you would, as the great Reverend, I'm all for it. So that has been, again, a blessing in itself as well.
Yeah, and people can catch you every Monday on Dark, every Tuesday, or every Monday on Dark Elevation, Tuesday on Dark itself, and on Being the Elite too. So like I said, dude, you're all over the place. As we wind down here, do you have a favorite match that you've had so far in AEW with the work that you've done? I guess two questions for you, two-part question. One favorite match that you've had so far in AEW, and then just your favorite match that you've had overall over the course of your career.
Oh boy. So yeah, in AEW, I think that probably one of my best matches was against Kazarian one-on-one. I think that that's, him and I we have great in-ring chemistry. He's one of the best to ever do it. And I don't think he gets as much credit for as good as he is. Like that match with Christian Cage a couple of weeks ago was for anybody who is a professional wrestling fan or anybody who's in the business who wants to look at a blueprint of how good something can be, should go back and reference that match. But anyway, one-on-one with Kazarian was probably my favorite match to date as far as matches that I've had on Dark, but there's been plenty that I've been very, very happy with. Lots of highlights and things as well throughout the process of Elevation and Dark. I really thought my match with Ryan Nemeth last night could have been a lot more if he didn't have his guys around ringside, causing distractions and causing a melee, if you would. So I'm looking to hopefully run that back with Ryan Nemeth in the future. Maybe if either I need to bring people to the dance to even the odds, or he needs to, let them step aside and go one-on-one with me, because I really do think that him and I could have done, something special, but time will tell on that. As far as overall, there's been a lot of matches. I've been very... I hate using the word blessed on a consistent basis, especially given the irony of a Reverend of Sin using that term. But I have been, I've had a lot of great matches. So you could use the Hardy match, even whether it's a ladder match, or the fact that I'm the only guy to compete in a deletion match and go and win. So I will always have that claim to fame. Nobody has ever been able to beat him in his own match. So the Woken deletion, which is the title of our deletion, was the only one where his opponent won, and that's me. So there's that. But I've, as I said, I've had a lot of great memories and matches all throughout my independent career. And it's just going to sound like I'm just name dropping on a consistent basis, but Kazarian in a ladder match in Canada. I teamed with my buddy Jason, who I just talked about, in Canada as well, with Bret Hart managing D.H. Smith and his partner at the time, Mark Merrick. So who gets to say that? I teamed with the Honky Tonk Man once upon a time, and we took on, a tag team. I got to wrestle Butch Reed, for those who know who Butch Reed is, when I was really young into my career, and that guy taught me a ton of things. Probably the best match I ever had on the independents was against Jerry Lynn, one-on-one. So again, and that was in 2012, probably about a year before he started, heading towards the end of his career. But again, just truly, there's a ton that I have done, and those are just the ones that stand out. I've had many with independent wrestlers that I could be here all day naming, some matches that I feel so elated and just everything went so perfect. So really, of course we all have bad matches, but I've been very fortunate, and I'm a storyteller at heart. I think very cinematically when it comes to professional wrestling, and I think that that translates well to my matches. So I try to always have every single one of my matches, no matter who it's against, really stand out. Just recently, as of literally 2 weeks ago, I wrestled Gangrel in a casket match here in Florida. So
that's crazy.
So again, I'm just I'm very lucky to be able to be having these opportunities. I wrestled Sin Bodhi again, which is another big name, but every piece of the puzzle ultimately makes me who I am. So all of these great opportunities, these insane matches, where people will never be able to say, I've wrestled Gangrel, who is one of the best to ever do it, who has a dark, brooding character, was able to take on the Reverend of Sin, Ryzen, and steal the show on the independents. And so again, lots and lots of opportunity. And that was in ARW. I want to make sure that I name drop them. And that was in Melbourne, Florida. So
nice.
Great company to check out for those who are interested. They will be able to watch that on Fight TV in the next coming weeks.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Well, that match sounds crazy. I mean, people joke about their 2021 bingo card and the crazy stuff that goes on. Would you have ever imagined having a match with literally not just a match, but a casket match with Gangrel over the course of your career? And especially given the different dynamics, or the similar dynamics rather, of your characters, that just sounds like it's a match I didn't know I wanted to see until you just mentioned it right now.
Yeah, same. And again, the cool thing about professional wrestling in total is the story never stops. You can make professional wrestling anything you want, and that's the beauty of social media as well, because really we could take this one step further, and I could have easily said the reason why I was beating him or challenging him in a casket match is because of what he did in the deletion match, which ties me to the Matt Hardy situation, which ties me to AEW. But I mean, again, you could literally take any and all of these stories and circumstance anywhere you want to go, and that's the beauty of professional wrestling, especially this day and age. Stories are limitless, and you are able to create anything and everything through the power of social media and through the power of the fans. The fans are a very, very crucial part of making or breaking a talent. And again, I've been very fortunate that I've had such a wonderful following over the years, some that are with me ride or die, that have been with me since day one, since I stepped into the ring, that still follow me today and sing my praises. So but no, I would have never guessed that. And and it's amazing that had come to fruition. But again, going back to pre-high school me, looking back at, if you guys saw my walls, they would have been covered in professional wrestling posters and playing the video games and this and that and the other. Imagine telling yourself, like, oh yeah, someday you're going to wrestle Billy Gunn, and you're going to not only super kick him or give him some sweet chin music, but you're going to crotch chop him and evade the famous, or yeah, right, maybe in your video game, you know what I mean? But and that's also a testament to them for prolonging their career to be like, Billy Gunn's in probably the best shape of his, some of the best shape of his life in his, in his 50s, and he is still out there kicking ass. And so again, testament to them, Gangrel and him and some of these others who are still able to go out there and perform on such a high level, and affording me the opportunity to be able to step between the ropes with them when I was just a young guy hoping to eventually do that.
That's a hell of a bucket list item. Again, to go from playing as Billy Gunn in these video games to then, stepping in the ring with him is pretty cool. And again, like you said, he's as active as ever. He's literally a lot like you on almost every dark show alongside the Gun Club. So it's crazy how things can change over time. But last question for you, man. You mentioned it earlier to kind of go full circle here. You mentioned it right there. Favorite video game? I guess like a two-parter. Favorite wrestling video game growing up and favorite video game in general?
I would say, and I got to admit that over the years, a lot of people are back into the video game era and video game world. And so I am not one that had jumped back into video games. I've been consumed by literally everything other than that, just trying to, as I said, put things together. I like to put videos together. I'm very cinematic in that approach and all that kind of stuff. And I just want to, I love horror movies, so anything that I can involve myself in and watching that stuff. But anyway, I loved my all-time favorite wrestling game was actually WrestleMania 2000 for the N64. I also liked No Mercy, but I was one of the unfortunate ones who had one of the very first copies that glitched out all the time.
Oh, God.
So if anybody knows the backstory of No Mercy, if you had one of the first copies, you could get towards the end of it and it would glitch out and erase everything. Your creator wrestlers, the story arc you were on, everything. So unfortunately I had one of those plagued versions, so that had left a sour taste in my mouth from those days. But I loved Revenge, which then brought me into WrestleMania 2000. So I would have to go right down the middle and say that WrestleMania 2000 was my favorite wrestling game. And then, of course, you could probably go through the SmackDown and Raws from that point on.
Yeah.
But then as far as a regular video game, I think that my biggest, the one that brings the most positive memory to me is Metal Gear Solid for the PlayStation. I remember my dad ordering me a pizza, and it had a PlayStation demo with the pizza.
That's
and
crazy.
Isn't that crazy to think about, that's something that you could just order a pizza and here comes a PlayStation demo disc with it.
Yeah.
And I popped it in and I got like the first 20 minutes of Metal Gear Solid, where basically the very first mission that you need to complete, and I was hooked. I begged and begged and begged for the 2-disc actual video game, and then that's probably, to be honest, that shows how much of a quote-unquote gamer I am. That's probably the only game to this day that I have completely beat to completion.
Wow. That's super impressive, and that's a classic game too. So that's a good choice. But you're speaking my language when you talk about No Mercy and NWO, WCW Revenge. Those games are classic. Like those games, I think I was born in '95, so those games like predate my wrestling fandom. But going back and playing them is such a blast. Like I still have a working copy of No Mercy. So if you're looking to beat the game and you still have the plagued version, let me know. Maybe I'll trade you one of these days.
It sounds good, and that's fantastic. That's such a staple in everybody's childhood, and I would say odds are for most wrestling fans, especially in that era, that's the game for most people. And fingers, toes, and eyes crossed, because I've heard some rumblings, and hopefully I'm not giving too much away, but I do feel like AEW is actually leaning towards that engine or that style of wrestling for their upcoming video games. So that's going to be obviously a tip of the hat to the how much people loved that game. Of course, just modernized for today's world. So if that's the case, I'm going to be playing a whole lot of AEW video games. So that might be the thing that sucks me back into the video game.
Ryzen in an AEW No Mercy styled video game would talk about full circle right there. It'd be amazing.
See, but again, with my frame of thinking, you can never say never, and I believe that if I speak it, it comes to fruition. It will come to existence. So, my career in AEW, I'm saying that I'm going to have a very big part in AEW going forward, and you will see me in a video game one of these days. It's bound to happen.
Yeah, I believe that as well, man. I'm a big fan of your work. Love the positive attitude. People can find you on the Twitter machine at Hail Ryzen, HAILRYZIN. And now, of course, as I said earlier, you're on Being the Elite, you're on Dark Elevation. You're pretty much everywhere, man, which is super cool to see here in
always front row center on Dynamite as well.
Yeah, that as well. You're all over the place, so people can catch you on Dynamite 2 in the front row. You can't miss you. You're all over the place, and you stand out in a good way, so it's cool to see. But anything I missed, man, that you want to plug as we wind down here? You nailed the Twitter machine. So at Hail Ryzen, you could find me on the same name on Instagram. I'm actually more popular on Instagram. I guess people just love looking at my face. So if you head over to Instagram, there's a lot of great content that sometimes I don't get around to posting on Twitter. Twitter has a lot of morsels of knowledge and preachings that I give on that. But Instagram is obviously a more visual way to follow me. And then, of course, I have a pro wrestling tees store, still named Rob Ryzen. So just throw the ROB in front of that. But all of my shirts are updated from the Woken Deletion all the way down the line to my most recent shirts. Hopefully in the future, as I said, speaking things into existence, maybe someday Nyla, Vicky, and I will have some church merch for you. But Pro Wrestling Tees is the place to get any Ryzen merch at this point, and following me on those two social medias is best. Awesome. Well, that church merch I think is inevitable, so I'm going to have to keep an eye out for that on Pro Wrestling Tees or wherever it might be popping up from Shop AEW possibly as well. But Ryzen, this has been awesome, man. Thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. You do great work, man. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do in the future.
Well, hallelujah, and thank you, my brother, and everybody else. Hail Ryzen.